Hey, what's up guys? So I'm here to showcase off two decks that not anyone is really talking about right now. And that first one that I want to talk about is utilizing just Venus in general. It doesn't have to be like Fairy World Chalice, but just in general, Venus is an insane card due to the Link era that we're in. We're just getting so much extra free monsters right now. And if you reset the things with Exodius, all the mystical shine balls, putting them back, it opens up for some really dirty turn 1 plays. I mean, look at that play turn 1. We've got 3 Link monsters. We have a Chalice, which prevents special summons. Well, that is if it was face up. Now the guy over here is playing some Subterrors, and it's kind of a cool, interesting build. I haven't seen anyone really utilize one of the cards that we're about to see over here, which is Summoner of Illusions. Really cool mix-up. I think both of these decks, guys, are really, really cool and innovative. I don't know if I would consider them top tier in terms of meta, but against most decks, if you go turn 1 Christia, they just lose. So I think that the Fairy deck has a little bit of potential just for like blowout, I instantly win. Whereas the Subterror build, I don't think I've ever seen anyone play Summoner of Illusions. Now, this card, it's a pretty simple effect, but you flip, you tribute 1 monster, and if you do, you get to spell summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck, but you destroy it during the end phase of this turn. We're about to see something pretty cool be summoned with Summoner of Illusions, but really what it comes down to is just showing off like both of these decks that, again, no one is really talking about. I think that they're okay decks. Now, again, versus, what is competitive in the game, do I think that these have a chance? Slightly. I don't think that they outclass the other decks due to consistency. Obviously, with playing 3 copies of Mystical Shine Ball, you open up that potentially for dead hands where you just instantly just lose because you draw too many of the vanilla monsters. We see Christia is now back face up over here. Christia is going to go ahead and attack, but the Subterror final battle is activated and Christia is going to go ahead and be destroyed. But then we saw Solemn Strike activated against the World Chalice Warrior over here, and he's going to go ahead and reset his stuff over here by summoning Exodius, the ultimate Forbidden Lord. That's a really good card in a lot of different decks, but we can see the Summoner of Illusions over here, and that was really cool. We see the Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon being summoned over here, and he's going to go ahead and try to activate the effect of the World Legacy World Chalice, but it's going to go ahead and get negated by Subterror Fiendus over here. Really, really good card, insane card from the Subterror archetype. Probably, I think, one of the cards that really might actually make them meta. But anyways, now that you guys have seen both the decks, let's go ahead and go over a deck profile for those of you guys that do want to try out both of these decks that I think, again, they're pretty cool and no one's talking about them. I think they're okay decks. Depending on what we get for Subterrors in the future and maybe Fairies in the future, these could become a little bit more meta, but I kind of want to talk about them because they're obscure decks right now, and I think that they deserve a little bit of love. But anyways, like I said, the problem that I think that can happen with the World Chalice Fairy decks, now I've seen a lot of World Chalice decks, but I mean, you literally open up with Venus, and you guys just saw it's just like free cards for days, and then on top of that, if you happen to have Exodius, you pretty much get to recycle your play, and you completely get to go off. But two really cool decks, and I think a lot of us probably still have a lot of the Fairy stuff lying around because, I mean, everyone bought Agents back in the day when they came out. That was a really, really good structure deck. But anyways, let's go and jump into the deck profile. We'll talk a little bit about some of the cards. So first off, we're playing 2 copies of the World Chalice Beckoned, 1 copy of the World Chalice Chosen, 3 Mystical Shine Balls. So, I mean, there is 6 vanillas. I mean, heck, dude, throw in that Rescue Rabbit, right? But, no, I don't think you'd actually want that. I mean, technically, you do get 2 summons because of the Brilliant Fusion. But, anyways, we got 3 copies of Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord. I think it works really well, as you guys saw during the plays. In fact, the OCG was going off with Venus. They were talking about this like in so many different builds of like anything. Venus just kind of became one of those staple cards in Link decks, kind of like how Gofu was at one point. Basically, if you were playing Link decks, you would just be like, okay, I'm just going to throw in triple Gofu. Now my deck is Link ready. And in the TCG, as of right now, I've seen a few people just run Gofu in general, and it's still a great card. However, Venus plus this is just, it's just so dirty. Like, there's, I mean, heck, could you guys imagine how far you can extend your plays if you were to Gofu, and then you would, at that point, you would have your Decode Talker, and then you would, on top of that, you can go for your Venus play. After that, you get all those Fairies in the graveyard. Obviously, you can follow up with a Christia, and then on top of that, you can just make just crazy fields turn 1, and it's pretty simple. And on top of that, you'd have light, dark, black, luster soldiers. There you go. But anyways, this card happens to also be a dark, so that's kind of cool. And then we have 3 copies of Archlord Christia, and 3 copies of World Legacy World Chalice, 3 copies of Venus, 3 copies of World Chalice Fairies, 2 copies of Lazuli, 2 copies of World Chalice Protector Dragon, 1 copy of Foolish, 2 copies of White Elephant's Gift. This is actually to let you draw more cards if you happen to draw them. Maybe you can go for that because you technically would get an extra summon, and it kind of can help out a little bit with that. If you don't happen to have Venus, so just special summon it from your hand. We have 2 copies of Pot of Dichotomy. This is again to reset some of your cards. There is one downside to the Dichotomy, which is that you cannot conduct your battle phase. It's kind of like a Pot of Avarice in a sense. Now the only downside is you have to target 3 monsters with different types in your graveyard, which, I mean, obviously in this deck you can get a lot of other cards to the graveyard that are just different types with the whole link mechanic, but it's just to recycle some of your plays. Then you have 2 copies of Unexpected Die. This is just used to further extend your combos because some of the things you need to extend your combos. Transmodify, pretty self-explanatory. You go from Shine Ball straight into this, and this can get you back basically the extra Shine Balls and just start going off with your plays. Now we see 2 copies of My Body as a shield, and this is because Christie is so good. I mean, Christie comes out, there's very few answers to this card in general, and then on top of that, it's usually Dark Hole or Regeki, and you know, you just My Body as shield and you'll be good to go. Then you have 3 Brilliant Fusion, just of course for the extra shenanigans. We didn't even see Brilliant Fusion used, yet we saw an amazing field turn 1. So you guys can definitely utilize this, and again, I think it's a lot of these cards we usually just have lying around anyways. As far as the extra deck, we've got 1 Gem Knight for the target of the Brilliant Fusion, Seraph Knight, and then we have the Firewall Dragon, 2 copies of that. This is just different artwork. Every time I see it, I'm like, whoa, what the heck is a new Firewall Dragon 2.0? And then we have the World Chalice Warrior, then we have Decode Talker, World Chalice Blade Master, 3 copies of the World Chalice Shrine Maiden, 2 copies of Proxy Dragon, 1 Link Spider, 3 copies of Imduck, the World Chalice Dragon. So that's it for this one, but the other one's kind of cool too, and thanks for sending in the replays. Let's go ahead and just save this real quick. And let's go ahead and check out the Subterror build. Again, these are just decks that I think just deserve a little bit more love over here. Anyways, we have 1 copy of the Subterror Nemesis Warrior. Oh, by the way, there's actually a few other targets that you can go for, but it's kind of see a Neo Blue Eyes, well, I mean, this is usually the card you're going to be going for because it's a pretty decent card. There's also this card that has some potential. It's just an extra target since you usually don't need the full access to that deck. Obviously, I would suggest playing some other cards to really utilize the full amount of the extra. Maybe like a Cowboy. Castell's always a good rank 4, but you have to go for the Photon Papilio Operative over here, which is still a pretty decent card. It kind of got phased out a long time ago when like Black Ship of Corn came out, and then Castell was just like replaced with that card. But anyways, let's go with the deck profile and talk a little about it. Anyways, first off, we got the Subterror Nemesis Warrior, 3 copies of Nemesis Archer, 1 Maxi, 3 copies of Fiendess, probably one of the best cards. We have 2 copies of Prediction Princess Tao Tre. This is the card that really is, like, it's pretty much used in like all the decks that really utilize flip effects. I'm actually thinking if maybe some people that play crawlers might utilize this card as well, because that archetype, it definitely can utilize some other things, but at the moment, as of right now, the deck is a very slow deck, but it already has good consistency. This just might ruin it. But anyways, next up we have 1 copy of the Sub Behemoth Ultra Maphos. Then we got Salagmo over here, 1 copy of him, 1 copy of Voltelleric over here, and 2 copies of Umostrix, 3 copies of Guru, 2 copies of Summoner of Illusions. This is why I thought the deck was a little bit interesting. Busting out this card is no joke. I mean, this card at the end of damage step, if this is the only face-up card you control, which is usually not going to happen, but you can send a Blue Eyes Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. It can't attack, and it can attack again in a row. That effect will be pretty much irrelevant, but once it says up to twice per turn during either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated that targets a Blue Eyes monster you control, you can banish this card from your graveyard to negate the activation if you do destroy it. In the off chance that you go for multiple, it's kind of cool. It almost reminds me back in the day. This is why I kind of wanted to go over this deck, because it was kind of nostalgic for me. I don't know if any of you guys have played Eternal Duelist Soul or played back in the day with Cyberstein, but this was a very common play. You would go Cyberstein, you pay 5 life points, go for Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and you'd attack for like an absurd amount of damage. It was kind of a classic play back back in like it was the Game Boy Advance games. But yeah, it was just like a standard play, and it was just really strong. When you like opened up with that, it was just like, wow, dude, I got a huge monster. And then they would, you know, change a heart, and then you just lose. But yeah, it just reminded me of that. But anyways, next up we got 1 copy of Terraforming, 1 copy of Pre-Preparation of Rites, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 3 Prediction Rituals, 2 copies of Swords of Concealing Light. This obviously helped them out a ton. And then we have 2 copies of Subterror Cave Clash, 3 copies of Hidden City, 2 copies of Metaverse to get that field spell. Then we have 1 copy of Ghost Trick Scare, 2 copies of Subterror Behemoth Burrowing, 2 copies of Subterror Final Battle, which actually saved him. And then we have 1 copy of Burst Rebirth, kind of a slow card, but it has its uses at the right time. I remember when people were playing this in Chalice. And then we have 2 copies of Solemn Strike. For the extra deck, I think you can really manage this extra deck much better, but I'm just showing you guys as is, and it was just kind of an interesting tech that I just didn't see anyone really play, because you can actually push for quite a bit of damage in this deck, and generally you don't really use your extra deck, so it was kind of a cool mix-up, utilizing the flip effects of this. I would say the Fairy thing, the Fairy deck, the Fairy World Chalice, will probably be a little bit more competitive than this deck, but it's just kind of cool to see it, and that's kind of what I wanted to share it with you guys, because there's probably a lot of cards you guys can go that are fusion monsters. You bring them out, and then maybe you can upgrade them through other cards. It's just kind of cool, and I'm surprised no one has shown off Summoner of Illusions inside a Subterror deck, and I felt like I wanted to share it with you guys. And then, okay, so we went over Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate. Like I said, I feel like you could probably drop this to 1 if you wanted to. And then we have Barbarite over here, which can actually do a decent amount of damage, but it makes it so like you get to negate the effects of monsters that activate in the graveyard, but I believe it cannot attack directly. That's the downside with this guy, but this guy will do the job. And then we have 2 copies of the Photon Butterfly, and then we got Zenmeister, 1 Soul of Silver Mountain, 1 Alucard, 2 copies of Invoker over here. Like I said, I think you guys can definitely add more cards into the extract to make it more efficient, but I wanted to showcase it off from the exact replay that I shared with you guys. But let me know, guys, what your thoughts are on these 2 obscure decks. I mean, personally, for me, I wasn't really a fan of Subterrors, but with the play that Summoner of Illusions just allows in the game, I'm interested to try out the deck a little bit more. It was a TCG exclusive archetype, and I feel like it's just not that meta. Like, it's not super popular, and Spirals are super popular right now. If you guys know, it's one of the best decks. But sometimes people say a deck is bad, and you know, later down the line they come up with some other support, and it makes the deck really good. So I'm interested to see what they add to the Subterror archetype, unless they're already finished with it. But again, it was just kind of cool to share this with you guys. But I really think that the Fairy deck, guys, it has so much potential, and I really like this because I still have all my Fairy cards lying around somewhere, and I wouldn't mind building this. I don't know if this is going to be a very expensive deck or not. I mean, YGOPRO is kind of the only pricey card, but it will get its reprint, don't worry. But I think it's pretty cool. I mean, Proxy Dragon's pretty cheap. It could be a decent little budget deck that just is a toolbox deck, and I really like decks that are toolboxy. I mean, you got options to go for Christia, you got Brilliant Fusion, Extra Summons, Throne, Junk Synchron. I don't know, I just have a lot of crazy ideas with this deck, because again, I remember OCG was freaking out about Agent of Creation Venus. They were talking about it, but no one in the TCG ever even mentioned it once. I think it's because the game just kind of evolved maybe too fast, but I still think that this is good play. I'm going to make a deck. We're going to be running it definitely later this week in the live stream with Venus. I'm going to do Gofu Venus. We're going to make a Chaos Agent deck. I don't know, I might just drop the World Chalice monsters completely, because I just like really combo-licious plays, and this deck, it offers a lot of it. But anyways, have some fun, guys, with these 2 decks that just no one's talking about, and you could be that rogue player out there, and that way people don't say, oh, you necked the Spiral deck, because I've seen Spiral so many times back to back this week. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing the video, and shoutouts to you guys for playing both these decks. I think both decks are really unique, and they're cool, and I wanted to share it with you guys. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like on it, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button to see more new Yu-Gi-Oh! Combo decks.